welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded usually from my 1968 Morris Minor. But as you might notice today, I'm in a slightly different Morris Minor. Peggy is still away for restoration at the time when I'm recording this, and I'm really fortunate to have the Morris Minor Owners Club van on a bit of a loan for the time being, and so there will be a couple of videos all about the van and about heritage assets and stuff like that for the podcast, but today's podcast is all about my first big adventure with the van, which happened just this weekend, gone at the time of recording, but it'll be a couple of weekends back when this goes out. And that was my big trip with the Women Drivers Social Club Weekender South. So the Women Drivers Social Club, if you've been a follower of the channel for a while or you follow me over on social media, you'll know that it is the club that I set up over a year ago now, following our International Women's Day meet for the first time, and it's gone from strength to strength. And we try to have a couple of single day events a year, as well as weekenders, which give us the opportunity to spend a bit more time together, go a little bit further afield, and have some really great driving adventures, as well as some pretty fun camping adventures. And this year we've split it into a north and south. Obviously it doesn't matter where you live, you're welcome to either of them, but it just means that there's more likely something on your doorstep if you're a little bit more nervous about going further afield. And for this particular trip I was fortunate enough to have the club van. Basically Jamie's Spitfire had a bit of a strop, and that'll probably be involved in a later video explaining that. But we were classic carless, so I asked the chairman of the club if the club van had any plans, and it's had some work done, and they really wanted it to have a bit of a test drive and a few other little jobs doing to it. So I was thrilled to have the opportunity to drive the van and also take it on this little adventure. So this particular weekender makes use of the May early bank holiday, and that meant that we got 3 days down enjoying some delights of the southern part of the country, and it was all kind of based in and around the kind of Surrey, Hampshire borders area. We set off around 7:30 on the Saturday morning, because it was going to take us about 3 and a bit hours to get down there, and we basically headed out to the A1 and went from there down, and we timed it reasonably well, that my parents who were coming along pulled out of where they joined the A1, and we were able to kind of convoy from there down to South Mimms, around the M25, off the M25 and towards Petersfield, where we had our first meet of the weekend. One of our members, Claire and Mush, who you'll have seen on the channel before, they bought a really lovely MGA from a place down there last summer, and the place that had it had a huge range of really interesting, quite expensive classic vehicles, and I got in contact with them and said, could we come and have a look round your collection of vehicles and your workshops and things like that. So that's where we were. Despite my best efforts, driving the van and things does take a little bit longer than Peggy would usually, and it was a big long drive that we had to take a little break on. So I was actually a little bit late there, but everyone else was already there enjoying themselves, parked up and looking around the vehicles. It was a fantastic array, so many Rolls Royces and Daimlers and Lanchesters and just all of those big things, but also there was kind of a VW Beetle a Messerschmitt, and a little Fiat 500, all kind of tucked away in there as well. So it was a vast range of stuff. And to be honest, despite all of these beautiful vehicles, the large majority of us were mostly fascinated by this car-based pallet truck that was able to move cars around the garage really freely, basically turning them on themselves to allow cars to get in and out quite well. Because whilst we were there, the owner was trying to get a little Ferrari out to be able to take it to the Italian day at Brooklands that afternoon. So we had a great time watching that. There was also a very burnt out Rolls Royce there that had kind of been brought over from California and was going to be restored, but truly was absolutely wrecked by the fire that had got hold of it, and was just fascinating to kind of see a car in that condition. And interestingly, it was parked next to I think a very nice Porsche, but most of our members were far more fascinated with the state of that particular vehicle. So we were there until about 1 o'clock, I having arrived at about 20 past 11, the rest of everyone arriving at around 11 o'clock. And we managed to have a pretty decent look round, big chat, and also meet some new members who had come along for the first time. And then it was time to kind of head back up a little bit further north, kind of doubling back on ourselves to our campsite. You don't have to camp on these weekends, but we do try and find a campsite that has some options available for people if they want to camp. But some of our members were staying in a hotel, and that was reasonably close. But fortunately, with this particular campsite, they were pretty welcoming to anybody having guests and stuff come along, because it was all part of a canal centre. So those who were staying in the hotel came back to the campsite with us anyway, saw us putting up our tents, and stayed for a little bit longer. We were really fortunate that one of our members, Claire Atkinson, who is an absolute whiz with gearboxes, also turned out to be an absolute whiz with chili. And she had made us all this fantastic chili meal that she warmed up in her van, and we all sat round and ate together on the Saturday night, sharing some stories. I brought out my infamous Chinook story as usual. But yeah, it was a really lovely night, and we had quite a nice little corner of the campsite away from a lot of people, and it made quite an interesting, eye-catching little section of the campsite because of all of our interesting vehicles and camping setups. We had a few people coming over and kind of talking to us, which I think is really nice. There was even a little boy who was making detours in the morning to come and see us, having met us on the Saturday night, to say hello to the cars and things like that as he went past, so that was lovely. Now, Sunday was our big important day as far as I was concerned. This was the thing that I was really kind of most looking forward to, as we were able to park ourselves on the track at Brooklands and go round Brooklands. Brooklands is such an important place for automotive racing history, but also for women in automotive, kind of being able to break beyond kind of gender discrimination and things like that, and partake in racing and setting world records and things like that. So I knew it was going to be a really important place to take the Women Drivers Social Club to at some point, and it seemed to fit kind of nicely with my plans for this particular weekend. Obviously, I'm a little bit gutted that Peggy wasn't able to be there with me, but I did take her number plate with me so that I could kind of say she'd been there with us in spirit. But we arrived in convoy with everyone who had come from the campsite, plus a couple of other people that had tagged along. And then there was a few other people that had come along just for the day at Brooklands. And we had quite a decent lineup of cars. I was really pleased with it. and it made for quite an impressive lineup along the finishing straight where we were parked, and we were greeted by one of their volunteers who gave us kind of a whistle-stop tour around Brooklands, as well as taking us up to the Cobra restoration place at the top of the hill, and us getting kind of exclusive access. With the first car club that's ever been kind of allowed to go in and walk around it, so that was really special, and everyone found that really fascinating. And then we kind of went back down Test Hill and managed to grab ourselves some lunch. I gave some of the group a little talk about some of the things to look out for in terms of women's history at Brooklands, before we all kind of split off into slightly smaller, more manageable groups to go around, making sure that we didn't leave anybody out, and make sure everyone had someone to kind of go around with. And yeah, we just explored the site, and it was really lovely to see that they had the kind of the ladies' reading room with a lot of photos and things in there that were to do with the women's racing there. They also had the singer that was part of the all-women singer team that had taken place with Kay Peter in the blue car that I mentioned in my video about Kay Peter. And yeah, it was a really nice afternoon, and we even managed to have a small group of us go on a bus trip, which now makes 3 Women Drivers Social Club events with bus trips incorporated. So it's really starting to become a thing, and I'm probably panicking about our weekender north and how we're going to incorporate some sort of bus trip. After we'd all been round, and some people had even hopped across the road to Mercedes-Benz World to have a look there, we parked all of the cars at a slightly staggered angle to get some more photos and some more interesting kind of angles of all of the cars that were in attendance. And I somewhat stupidly had this idea of picking up the flag and kind of going down the line of cars to kind of emulate kind of the finishing straight kind of look, and I had my lovely kind of checkerboard jumpsuit that all matches and everything on, and I didn't get past the first car before I stumbled and fell almost flat on my face. Luckily there was a lot of people recording, because I had told them that I was going to go down the line of cars, and so we got quite a funny video out of it, which if you follow over on Instagram or have seen the shorts on YouTube, you'll have seen my edit of that video. But it did make for a bit of a giggle, and I came away relatively unscathed. I've just got kind of a little bit of a scuffed up hand, and that's about it. So all things considered, quite funny, and reasonably little injury. We finished up at Brooklands not long before closing, and as people drove away, quite a few of us made the opportunity to move our cars up towards famous banking and get some photos there as well as take a chance to get close to some of the various petrol pumps and things that are around the site. Some even managed to find the correct gate to park their cars outside of in order to get a photo of their car near Concord. Then it was back to the campsite, and we didn't convoy because there was various people who needed to grab some shopping, grab some fuel and things like that. Then once we were back at the campsite, again we were joined by a few people who weren't staying there to enjoy an evening, sat round chatting. And to be honest, as much as I love all of the driving round and the going to these exciting places with the group, I'm so love the sitting round in the evenings and having a nice chat and getting to know each other a little bit better. And I think that's where so many of these fantastic friendships are being formed from the group. We sat round until a little bit later in the evening, ate some Domino's pizzas that we'd ordered, before we then headed off to our tents for, unfortunately, a very, very wet night. It absolutely threw it down, and our tents had no opportunity to dry in the morning because it just carried on all the way through the morning. We all ended up packing away damp tents, and that was a situation where I was incredibly thankful that I had the van, because I had the space to be able to keep everything else dry, but also be able to put away a tent that wouldn't go away fully because it was so wet. And I'm not entirely sure how that might have gone if I was in Peggy, but the van coped incredibly well with that. We then did a very soggy convoy over to the new Caffeine and machine down there, the hut, got ourselves all parked up, and went inside to warm up, dry off, and grab some fantastic brunch, share some more stories that we hadn't had chance to from the day before, and then head all our separate ways home. Again, the rain didn't really let up until we were almost home. So we experienced some of the most torrential rain on the M25, and we were in convoy with my sister in her Hillman, California, and my parents in their Singer Chamois. And yeah, it was quite an experience, especially being in the van with the low visibility out of the rear. I was very fortunate that I had cars behind me that kind of knew what I was doing and where I was going, and we had contact with the walkie-talkies, because it was incredibly tricky to work out what was going on and where things were. But that's all stuff that I'm hopefully working on whilst I've got hold of the van. I've improved it with the front wing mirrors, and some more details will come over the next few weeks about having the van. But yeah, a hugely successful weekend. I'm so grateful to everyone who came along, who had a fantastic time, who shared stories, made the effort, and that's the thing with these Women Drivers Social Club events. We had some people who made incredible effort to be with us that weekend. So yeah, a huge thanks to everyone who made the effort to come along. We had some people that came really far distances. Simone from Hooked on Classics, Sophie and Hannah, who had come and camped with us from Leeds, Amy, who had come from Norwich, Amanda, who had come from Norwich, Katie from Wrench and Wench. But even the people that had come locally really threw themselves into it and were camping just 5 minutes away from their home. Yeah, it was just a fantastic weekend all round, and we're so grateful to the effort. I couldn't list everyone who came because it'll end up sounding like an awards speech, but it's a fantastic community, and I'm so grateful to everyone who made any form of effort to come along and partake, and I really hope you enjoyed yourselves, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing about it, and if you've been watching on the YouTube, enjoyed some of the footage and stuff that was collected over the weekend of us enjoying our time out down south. So this is the podcast kind of back again. It will be a couple of weeks yet before Peggy joins us, but in the meantime I've obviously got some stuff with the van to share with you. If you've got any specific questions about the experiences of driving a van versus Peggy, obviously Peggy not being standard, this van is currently incredibly standard, and that's making for some interesting differences, including, let's see if we can make it do it. Hopefully you heard that. It's got an incredibly rasping exhaust, which I'm hugely enjoying. But yeah, that was my weekender away with the fantastic Women Drivers Social Club. Thank you ever so much for listening. Drive safely and happy motoring.